CSS, cascading style sheets, is the code that styles web content. CSS Basics walks through what you need to get started. I'll answer questions like, how do I make text red? How do I make content display at a certain location in the web page layout? How do I decorate my web page with background images and colors? Before starting, I recommend you to watch the set of videos in which I wanna introduce you to the practicalities of web development. You'll set up the tools you need to construct a web page and publish your own code. What is CSS? Like HTML, CSS is not a programming language. It's not a markup language either. CSS is a style sheet language. CSS is what you use to selectively style HTML elements. For example, the CSS selects paragraph text, setting the color to red. Let's try it out. Using a text editor, write the 3 lines of CSS above into a new file. Save the file as style.css in a directory named styles. To make the code work, we still need to apply the CSS above to your HTML document. Otherwise, the styling won't change the appearance of the HTML. If you haven't been following our project, pause here to watch Dealing with Files and HTML Basics, which I put the link above. Number 1, open your index.html file. Paste the following line in the head, between the head and /head tags. Number 2, save index.html and load it in your browser. You should see something like this. If your paragraph text is red, congratulations. Your CSS is working. Anatomy of a CSS rule set. Let's dissect the CSS code for red paragraph text to understand how it works. The whole structure is called a rule set. The term rule set is often referred to as just rule. Note the names of the individual parts. Selector. This is the HTML element name at the start of the rule set. It defines the element to be styled, in this example, p elements. To style a different element, change the selector. Properties. These are ways in which you can style an HTML element. In this example, color is a property of the p elements. In CSS, you choose which properties you want to affect in the rule. Property value. To the right of the property after the colon there is the property value. This chooses one out of many possible appearances for a given property. For example, there are many color values in addition to red. Declaration. This is a single rule like color, red. It specifies which of the element's properties you want to style. Note the other important parts of the syntax. Apart from the selector, each rule set must be wrapped in curly braces. Within each declaration, you must use a colon to separate the property from its value or values. Within each rule set, you must use a semicolon to separate each declaration from the next one. To modify multiple property values in one rule set, write them separated by semicolons, like this. Selecting multiple elements. You can also select multiple elements and apply a single rule set to all of them. Separate multiple selectors by commas. For example, different types of selectors. There are many different types of selectors. The examples above use element selectors, which select all elements of a given type. But we can make more specific selections as well. Here are some of the more common types of selectors. Fonts and text. Now that we've explored some CSS fundamentals, let's improve the appearance of the example by adding more rules and information to the style.css file. Number 1. First, find the output from Google Fonts that you previously saved from What Will Your Website Look Like? Which I put the link above. Add the link element somewhere inside your index.html's head, anywhere between the head and /head tags. It looks something like this. This code links your page to a style sheet that loads the Open Sans font family with your web page. Next, delete the existing rule you have in your style.css file. It was a good test, but let's not continue with lots of red text. Add the following lines, replacing the font family assignment with your font family selection from What Will Your Website Look Like? The property font family refers to the font you want to use for text. This rule defines a global base font and font size for the whole page. Since HTML is the parent element of the whole page, all elements inside it inherit the same font size and font family. Note that anything in CSS between /* and */ is a CSS comment. The browser ignores comments as it renders the code. CSS comments are a way for you to write helpful notes about your code or logic. Now let's set font sizes for elements that will have text inside the HTML body, H1, Li, and P. We'll also center the heading. Finally, let's expand the second rule set with settings for line height and letter spacing to make body content more readable. Adjust the px values as you like. Your work in progress should look similar to this. CSS, all about boxes. CSS layout is mostly based on the box model. Each box taking up space on your page has properties like padding, the space around the content. In the example below, it is the space around the paragraph text. Border, the solid line that is just outside the padding. Margin, the space around the outside of the border. In this section I also use width of an element. Background color, the color behind an element's content, and padding. Color, the color of an element's content, usually text. Text shadow sets a drop shadow on the text inside an element. Display sets the display mode of an element. Keep watching to learn more. To continue, let's add more CSS. Keep adding these new rules at the bottom of style.css. Experiment with changing values to see what happens. Changing the page color. This rule sets a background color for the entire page. Change the color code to the color you chose in What Will My Website Look Like? Which I put the link above. Styling the body. There are several declarations for the body element. Let's go through these line by line. Width, 600 px. This forces the body to always be 600 pixels wide. Margin, 0 auto. When you set two values on a property like margin or padding, the first value affects the element's top and bottom side, setting it to 0 in this case. The second value affects the left and right side. Here, auto is a special value that divides the available horizontal space evenly between left and right. You can also use 1, 2, 3, or 4 values. Background color, #FF9500, this sets the element's background color. This project uses a reddish-orange for the body background color, as opposed to dark blue for the HTML element. Feel free to experiment. Padding, 020px 20px 20px. This sets 4 values for padding. The goal is to put some space around the content. In this example, there is no padding on the top of the body, and 20 pixels on the right, bottom, and left. The values set top, right, bottom, left, in that order. As with margin, you can use 1, 2, 3, or 4 values. Border, 5px solid black. This sets values for the width, style, and color of the border. In this case, it's a 5-pixel, wide, solid black border, on all sides of the body. Positioning and styling the main page title. You may have noticed there's a horrible gap at the top of the body. That happens because browsers apply default styling to the H1 element, among others. That might seem like a bad idea, but the intent is to provide basic readability for unstyled pages. To eliminate the gap, we overwrite the browser's default styling with the setting margin, 0. Next, we set the heading's top and bottom padding to 20 pixels. Following that, we set the heading text to be the same color as the HTML background color. Finally, text shadow applies a shadow to the text content of the element. Its 4 values are: the first pixel value sets the horizontal offset of the shadow from the text, how far it moves across. The second pixel value sets the vertical offset of the shadow from the text, how far it moves down. The third pixel value sets the blur radius of the shadow. A larger value produces a more fuzzy-looking shadow. The fourth value sets the base color of the shadow. Try experimenting with different values to see how it changes the appearance. Centering the image. Next, we center the image to make it look better. We could use the margin, 0 auto trick again as we did for the body, but there are differences that require an additional setting to make the CSS work. The body is a block element, meaning it takes up space on the page. The margin applied to a block element will be respected by other elements on the page. In contrast, images are inline elements. For the auto margin trick to work on this image, we must give it block level behavior using display block. Note that the instructions above assume that you're using an image smaller than the width set on the body, 600 pixels. If your image is larger, it will overflow the body, spilling into the rest of the page. To fix this, you can either 1. Reduce the image width using a graphics editor, or 2. Use CSS to size the image by setting the width property on the img element with a smaller value. Note that don't be too concerned if you don't completely understand display, block, or the differences between a block element and an inline element. It will make more sense as you continue your study of CSS. You can find more information about different display values on my later tutorials. Conclusion. If you followed all the instructions in this video, you should have a page that looks similar to this one. If you get stuck, you can always compare your work with my finished example code, which I put the link on description. In this exercise, we have just scratched the surface of CSS. To go further, wait for my learning to style HTML using CSS topic. Be sure to follow the next parts of this tutorial. I hope this tutorial is useful for you. If you liked this video, be sure to like this video, subscribe Learning Bee channel, activate the bell next to it. Don't miss the next videos. I love you very much. Until next tutorial. Goodbye.